Today, we're looking at a red ink by Akkerman, their Dutch Masters number 12. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that you can skip around, but if you got the time, I would appreciate if you check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can check me out over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen inks, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Tasha Spectrum with a music nib, used it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done on a standardized set of paper of Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia. There are additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up as a sample, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter, ever so slightly lighter than the 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen or shade, 8 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen or shade, 13 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both do show us some color variation when you look far left to far right, but I'm really not getting it in the writing itself. Tomoe River. No bleeding, and normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 stub has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 10 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 7 seconds to dry. Medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine. I want to say just a tone darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us some color variation, but it's really not coming through in the writing sample. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. Up first is the chromatography. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this is a true prime red. It is just red. Or is it? There's a moment that shows up here that makes me say maybe something slightly different. So what we see is this is very diluted at the bottom, pushing its way up, and it gets much darker red. But you see just before the halfway point on the left, this sort of orange moment. Now I'm not sure if that's an orange that's hidden behind the red, or if that's actually another color that's in there making this up. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And now the line on the bottom looks a little darker, but not a whole lot. It's a little darker, all of it pushing its way up, but it was given 10 minutes on the filter paper. Now the thing is, on the left side, you do see hints of that orangey tone that we saw in the first chromatography, which does make me think that there might be a little bit of orange in this mix. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it generally handles itself pretty well. That extra fine is still an extra fine. It does blow out a little bit and have some feathering that occurs on both of the H's on the I, but it doesn't make it unreadable, and it doesn't make me afraid to use it in a note-taking situation. Now water's reactivating and lifting it completely off the page. Looking at the bottom of the water dot, you definitely see the white of the paper start coming through, which makes me say water is all that you need to get this out of your pen. Pen flush does everything that water does. You see the little bit of the white of the paper coming through at the top of where the pen flush was. But it does nothing more, so there's no need for that. Speaking of no need, there's 1/3 bleach solution. It completely obliterates it off the paper, but we don't need this to clean it out of your pen. I test ink viscosity with a tilt test that I'll link somewhere. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Akkerman Dutch Masters number 12 has a viscosity of 3.29, making this a drier ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all 6 of those numbers. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman Dutch Masters number 12 has an average dry time of 12 seconds, making this a faster drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman Dutch Masters number 12, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice gray, and I went with Noodler's Lexington Gray. The second writing sample is done on Leuchtturm 1917, a composition notebook like science class, and 28-pound copy paper. Here we're going to take a look at Leuchtturm 1917 journals. Oops. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 8 seconds to dry. The medium is significantly darker than even the stub. It is by far the darkest tone on the page. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine, when you look far left to far right, does show some color variation, but it's not up in the writing sample. The medium shows none. How about a composition notebook? No bleeding, but a lot of ghosting, but it's very thin paper. The medium at the top has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation, and we didn't get any color variation. And last up is 28-pound premium copy paper. Now, we do get some bleed spots with the stub. We get a couple of bleed spots with the extra fine, but it's not coming all the way through the paper. It is not touching the paper underneath. It would make the back of the page unusable for me. With it, we do get some very minor ghosting. The medium has a ton of feathering all over it. The feathering is very consistent, but very small. Not so distracting that it would stop you from really using this. It's got no spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the medium with no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. And I don't know, 1 second to dry. And that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Dutch Masters number 12? It's funny because it's during this ink that I learned that I don't actually prefer shading in red inks. Most of them don't tend to shade, which then is nice. This ink does offer a little bit of shading, and it does put a very nice, pleasant tone down on the page. So what nib and pen would give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a wet fine, made sure that you didn't get the shading, because as I said, I discovered I don't like shading in red inks. It puts down a good darker tone of this ink. It's not obnoxious, and I didn't have to see the shading that I found out I don't like in red. Something new. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.